preservation of the Union was ensured by extraterrestrial beings.
Well, time to grab the Captain Morgan again. Due to popular demand, and because my last Ancient Aliens video was literally my most popular ever, check it out if you can, I'm going to be doing another Ancient Aliens debunking video. Yay! And what great historic event was influenced by aliens now? Well, of course it's the Civil War. Everyone knows the great leaders of the Civil War were Abraham Lincoln, Robert E. Lee, and the great Lord Xenu. Full kidding aside, here's the first clip.
This prophecy onto his flock, stating, wars will shortly come to pass, beginning at the rebellion of South Carolina. The southern states shall be divided against the northern states. Possible that both George Washington and Joseph Smith were visited by extraterrestrial beings who somehow knew that the Civil War would take place.
According to Ancient Aliens, the Mormon prophet Joseph Smith was told by the angel Moroni, who apparently is an alien now, that the Civil War would start in South Carolina and would be waged between the North and the South. Yet, Ancient Aliens cleverly disguised the date of Joseph Smith's supposed Civil War prophecy, which was December 25th, 1832. This will be important later. Most important of all, Ancient Aliens fails to mention that South Carolina almost seceded from the Union during the nullification crisis of 1832, an event which started on, wait for it, July 1st, 1832. This means Smith's prophecy was 6 months after South Carolina already threatened to secede. The nullification crisis was in everybody's mind during late 1832. So it would make sense that an American Civil War would start in South Carolina. This certainly diminishes the legitimacy of Smith's prophecy, but it also only gets worse from there. The prediction the war will be waged between the North and the South is not impressive. Since the founding of the United States, our founding fathers realized there was regional differences between the North and the South, and the key to those regional differences was slavery. In many Americans' eyes, a civil war was inevitable, especially after the invention of the cotton gin in 1794, which revitalized the American slave trade. Saying an American Civil War will be between the North and the South is like me saying in the future there will be war in the Middle East. Like, yeah, no shit. When it comes to Washington, feeling that the United States was on the brink of civil war was not an uncommon thought by the founding fathers. You have to remember, the United States was a fragile nation in its infancy, only aligned by the loosely uniting Articles of Confederation. In fact, America had 2 early rebellions, which were Shays' Rebellion and the Risky Rebellion, both of which, if not handled properly, could have led to an American Civil War. And as mentioned before, the slavery question was still in the back of everybody's mind. This is a clear example of Ancient Aliens trying to cherry-pick history to fit the narrative that the Civil War was predicted by aliens. As you can see, not true. Next clip.
So you have to ask yourself, did extraterrestrials in some way influence this battle by disguising themselves as a familiar figure like George Washington?
So Ancient Aliens is arguing that aliens disguise themselves as figures like George Washington to allow Lincoln to see the future. Okay, let's pretend for a second this is true. How come Lincoln, who can see the future, had General Grant on the East Coast early in the war and instead used failed generals such as George McClellan? In fact, if Lincoln can see the future, why was he ever worried about his re-election in 1864? Shouldn't he have been a shoo-in if, he can see the future? Also, I love how Ancient Aliens claims that Lincoln was shown the future only in battles the Union won. Like, aliens showed him the future, but only certain battles, so Confederate victories like Bull Run or the Battle of Chattanooga were just times Lincoln didn't know the future. When it comes to Antietam, the reason why the Union won was because Union soldiers found copies of Lee's battle plans. In fact, if General George McClellan didn't act so cautiously, then Lee could have been captured, which would have essentially ended the war. It wasn't aliens, it was luck that the Union won that battle, as this was early in the war, and the Confederates certainly had a chance. Next clip.
Be that the head injury Ambrose Bierce suffered allowed him to receive information from an otherworldly source.
Interesting to note that he met with another famous adventurer, traveler, an Englishman named Frederick Mitchell Hedges. Mitchell Hedges was the man who claimed to discover the first crystal skull.
Oh my god, my brain hurts right now. This is where things start to get very cringy. According to Ancient Aliens, science fiction writer Ambrose Bierce was contacted by aliens after his brain accident in the Civil War. This eventually led Bierce to write science fiction, which, according to ancient astronaut theorists, were concepts Bierce was attempting to groom humanity for. But, again, this is such a stretch. If this were true for Bierce, this would imply every science fiction author is being contacted by aliens so they can set the stage for humanity. Think about how improbable this is. Yet the claims only get dumber as they go along. They cite Ambrose Bierce's mysterious disappearance as evidence of aliens because they believe Bierce just went with aliens to a different dimension. Evidence of this is through a mysterious letter he wrote to his secretary, which said, "As to me, I leave here tomorrow for an unknown destination." Additionally, they claim Bierce had a relationship with Crystal Skull founder Frederick Mitchell Hedges, and the two consulted one another about aliens. However, Ancient Aliens fails to mention how Hedges is known to have faked the crystal skulls, which frankly deserves a video on its own, but also how Bierce was going to Chihuahua, Mexico, which was in the midst of the Pancho Villa Revolution. Bierce could have died from an accident because of that. Lastly, there's also evidence to suggest that Bierce simply lied about his location and committed suicide in the Grand Canyon. The point is, we don't know, but I can tell you with almost certainty, Bierce wasn't captured by aliens, and he didn't go to a different planet or dimension.
And that's an increase in sightings when wars break out. First World War, Second World War, Vietnam, the Korean War, they all had their UFO incidents.
When it comes to aerial sightings during World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, one has to remember in modern warfare, many new aerial technologies are being developed and tested. This means common soldiers and sometimes officers are unaware of what the military is testing. Well, unless you are an intelligence officer, you're most likely blind to what the enemy is testing. It makes sense that you'll see unidentified flying objects on a consistent basis. Obviously, there were no airplanes during the Civil War, but at the same time, you have to take account the education level of a common Civil War soldier. A farmhand from Mississippi or factory worker from New York had minimal knowledge about astronomy. Therefore, when common occurrences such as asteroids, eclipses, or other space phenomenon occurred, the average Civil War soldier would justify it as a divine presence. And this might sound dumb, but think about what soldiers do in their spare time. They drink. And I know I've seen my fair share of insane things when I'm drunk, but that doesn't mean it's aliens.
If there wasn't some kind of extraterrestrial influence here, and did they have some connection to these star people?
Erect the Statue of Freedom as a tribute to star beings that they believed might be watching over the country.
Because you have brain cells, you can probably guess the Statue of Freedom was not made to commemorate ancient aliens who mysteriously guided America to its founding. Instead, the statue was supposed to represent the spirit of freedom and was commemorated in the Civil War to symbolize the preservation of the Union. In fact, many of the designs for the statue was created by a slave, something that should be talked about, but instead, History Channel is talking about star people. So, History Channel, please stop making batshit crazy claims and talk about real history. If you want more Ancient Aliens debunking videos, remember to like and subscribe. And if you have a specific episode you want me to debunk, I will be happy to do so. Thank you.